is Robert Campbell. I teach piano at Homeschool Connections. A little bit about myself. I have 2 music degrees from a university, and I've been teaching in the Seattle area for nearly 30 years. Each of my students is unique, and they don't all learn exactly the same way. So when I begin a new student in my studio, I always tell them, or I try to remember to tell them, that there are no dumb questions in my studio. And that's because sometimes maybe I just don't explain something the right way. And so I just ask them to ask me questions. I love questions. So that way we can help them understand what they need to know better. What's most important to me is that my students are learning and growing and enjoying their music. And a lot of that has to do with just them being consistent. That doesn't mean they have to practice a whole lot every day, but I do ask them to practice regularly because it's very important. I find that when people do practice, whatever it is they're practicing, whether it's golf or whether it's piano, and they get better, they enjoy it a lot more. And it's also a self-esteem builder, which is a really good thing. So that's very important to me. One other thing that's very important to me is I teach my students the whys in learning. What I mean by the whys is not the W-I-S-E whys, but the whys, the questions. In other words, why are we doing this? Why did we learn something? Why are we learning this scale? I think it's important. If we don't see the purpose in what we're learning, I don't really understand why we're doing it. So I want them to know why. For example, learning a scale. A student might ask, well, why are we learning this? Oh, just because I told you to learn it? No, that's not good enough to me. It's true that, first of all, a scale is something you're going to see in a lot of your music. So it's great to understand how to play it, and it's great to understand the proper technique to play a scale. But beyond that, it goes much further than that. The scale is our basis for our musical theory, whether it's the scale degrees and the chords that go with those. That's very important. It helps us to learn how to compose. That piece I started playing for you at the beginning was a piece that I wrote. And so I like to teach my students to compose. Some are really fascinated by that, and others aren't so interested, but we give them an opportunity. And so those chords that you learn from the scale are very important in composition. So I teach them theory, of course. I also teach them about technique. Technique's really important as well. So another thing that's really important to me is that I just mentioned I talk to my students about technique. And what that involves is just how to play the instrument, how to play it with the most ease. And that's so important. When I tell my students, if it looks good, in other words, if you look good while you're playing, if your hands look good, and it feels comfortable to you. So if it looks good and feels good, it's probably going to sound good. Well, it's really important to think about that, because when it's easy to play, it's more comfortable for the pianist to play it, but it's also going to make it sound better for the people listening. And so we want to play with as much ease and efficiency as we can, and with less stress. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah. So, and then it's also essential that we understand how to study our piano music, how to learn. I feel like I'm really qualified in this area, and that's only because I made so many mistakes in the learning process of the piano. I tried to leapfrog many things. I thought, I'll get there faster, and what it did was just cause me to get there a little slower. And at the university, I had an enormous amount of music to learn in a very short period of time. That also taught me to be very efficient in how to practice. And over the years, I've learned more and more about that, but I'd love to share that with my students because I wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to learn. And so that's what it's really all about. Something about what I teach is I play just about all styles. You heard one of them. I don't know exactly what style you call that, maybe a Latin sort of jazz thing, but I also like to play classical music too. So Debussy, but Mozart and Bach, and I've had a lot of, well, 5 years at least of training at the university level for classical playing as well. So I enjoy teaching all styles of music, worship music, whatever my students, primarily whatever they like to learn. So that tells you a little bit about me. If you want more information, you can give me a call or text me at 425-273-5657. And you probably can get my email off of the Connections website. So just let me know if you have any interest and any questions about how I teach or what my philosophies of teaching or whatever that might be. And I'll be happy to share those with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.